I never expected to see my ex-wife and our son on a flight. Unbelievable twist of fate unfolds. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It felt like a punch to the gut. My heart raced as the airport buzzed around me, people chatting, children squealing, the echo of announcements in the air. I had just finished a grueling week at work, desperate to escape to a quiet place, when my eyes locked onto a familiar face in the crowd. There she was, Melanie. My ex-wife, with her hair cascading over her shoulders like it used to, and our son, Caleb, bouncing eagerly beside her. The world around me faded, drowning in a sea of disbelief. Caleb, with his wide brown eyes and a big grin, looked so much like a mini version of her. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen them in almost a year. A distant memory surfaced. Our last argument, filled with hurt and closing doors. The days, hours, and lonely nights had turned my home into silence. I had thought I'd moved on, that I could step forward without them, but there they were. Fate mocks us sometimes. They were supposed to be several states away, starting anew. My fingers trembled and my palms grew slick with sweat. I wanted to disappear, but I was rooted in place, unable to tear my gaze away. Were they coming back? What were they hiding? The scent of coffee wafted through the air, mixing with my racing thoughts. Should I approach? No, that would be too much. Would she even recognize me? A sudden commotion snapped me back. A father scolding his child, voices rising through the crowded terminal. Melanie and Caleb turned, their faces peppered with curiosity and concern. I froze, heartbeat booming in my ears. Did they see me? I was sure they couldn't. The swirl of people offered me the perfect cover, yet part of me ached to shout, to close the distance. A pang of loss climbed through my throat. Then, without thinking, I stepped back, purposely slipping away into the sea of strangers. I wanted answers. I needed to know why they were here. But my mind buzzed with questions. My heart sank when I glanced back. They were gone. Had that really been my chance? Or was it just another twist of fate playing a cruel trick on me? In the moments that followed, panic washed over me. Voices, laughter, the soundtrack of the airport filled my ears again, but all I could hear was my own confusion. What were they doing? Where were they going? I leaned against the cool metal of the terminal railing, trying to catch my breath. Was it wrong to want them back? Aching for connection after all that had happened, just then, my phone pinged with an unfamiliar message, snapping me out of my reverie. My heart dropped. Who could it be? The screen glowed brightly in the dimness, revealing a message that threatened to shatter the walls I had built since they left. I know where they are. I clutched the phone tightly, my head spinning. What did that even mean? I peered around, searching, desperate to find them. But the faces all blurred together, strangers in a world that shouldn't feel so alone. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As I stood there, gripping my phone like a lifeline, my breath quickened. Who was sending me messages about Melanie and Caleb? My fingers hesitated over the screen, nerves coursing through me. I wanted to know everything, but fear held me back. The last thing I needed was another confrontation filled with resentment and harsh words. I glanced around, feeling the world shift beneath my feet. The airport felt vast and stifling at the same time, a cacophony of strangers who all seemed so blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my chest. I took a deep breath and made my way toward the exit, ignoring the fluttering thoughts that berated me for trying to escape. It wasn't until I reached my car that a heat seeped into my veins, the combination of the message I had just received and the earlier sight of my family. I couldn't go home like this. Not when they were so close. Fueled by desperation, I opened the message. I was met with a simple text: "They're at the cafe by gate C, I'll be there soon. I can help you." My heart raced. I didn't recognize the number. Who had this information? My anxiety spiked, mixed with a flicker of hope that maybe this was a chance to reconnect, to breathe life into the fracture that had consumed my family. Before I could talk myself out of it, I turned on my heels and headed back inside. Every footfall echoed my heartbeat as I made my way to gate C, scanning the bustling crowd for a familiar face. With each passing moment, my mind unfurled memories: Caleb's laughter, Melanie's smile, picturing them together, wrapped in a warmth I hadn't felt in ages. But I was also confronted by the echoes of anger and sorrow, days that whispered of how things had spiraled out of our grasp. Would they even want me back? I forced my feet forward, each step heavy with doubt. As I approached the cafe, I saw the seating area fill with families and couples, laughter and chatter spilling like sunlight. My heart sank lower as I couldn't spot them anywhere, but still, I couldn't turn back. Just as I was about to retrace my steps, a familiar laughter drifted through the air. A light, sincere sound that belonged only to Caleb. I followed that laughter, heart pounding, until I caught sight of him. There he was, sitting at a small table, his head thrown back in joy. Melanie was there too, her hair catching the sunlight, creating an ethereal halo around her. She looked so at ease, radiating warmth as she shared her sandwich with Caleb, who was animatedly talking about something that made her chuckle. I was transfixed. I hadn't seen that smile on her face in a year. I took a step closer, feeling like an intruder in a moment filled with such light. My heart ached with longing as I watched her gaze soften, how effortlessly she communicated with Caleb. I wanted that connection too, but just as I was about to take another step, a figure approached them, tall, with an easy gait and a confident smile. My breath hitched as I recognized him from social functions, an acquaintance of mine. Jason, a man with charm and ambition, someone who had made it clear at one point that he admired Melanie. The sight of him sent a jolt through me, igniting jealousy, but it also drew a much darker shadow across my hopeful certainty. "Hey, what a surprise," Jason said, leaning over the table as he leaned more towards Melanie, his body language closed around her like a fortress. My legs felt like lead. I couldn't breathe. I could only watch as Caleb's laughter faltered, understanding shifting across his little features. "Caleb, why don't we go get dessert?" Melanie suggested, trying to steer the attention away. But my heart pounded furiously, each thud echoing my disbelief as Jason's hand found her wrist, a friendly gesture that felt too possessive. I felt like my world was closing in on me, suffocating, trapped by the fear of losing them again, and then the unimaginable happened. As they stood to leave, Jason turned his gaze in my direction, his eyes narrowing. "Oh, look who it is," he called out, and the warmth in Melanie's smile evaporated like morning dew as she turned to see me. Standing only a few feet away, shock painting her features. "We were just talking about you." My mind raced. How could he say that? What did he mean by talking about me? A wave of vulnerability washed over me. The moment had turned from warmth and hope to something else entirely, and I felt the weight of every memory I had tried to reconcile crashing around me. Melanie's eyes held surprise, and something else. Was it apprehension? Or was it something deeper? I could see the shimmer of confusion swim within them as they met mine. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. The air was heavy with tension, possibilities unfolding between us like a delicate thread ready to snap. Did I ask this a bad time? I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I was met with silence, but it wasn't the answer I hoped for. The tension crackled dangerously, as unfamiliar emotions surged into the air around us. An invisible barrier had formed once again, stronger than it ever had been before. And in that moment, as Caleb looked back and forth between us, bewilderment in his innocent eyes, I realized how far I might have to stretch to bridge this rift, a fissure layered with pain, misunderstandings, and perhaps, a chance for healing. But it was a chance that felt just out of reach, hanging in the balance like a fragile thread. The weight of uncertainty loomed large as I shifted my gaze to Jason, who stood there with that smug smile that made my blood boil. "Nothing's ever simple, is it?" I thought as I braced myself for the confrontation ahead, feeling as if I were standing on the precipice of everything I ever feared. Then, the message from before echoed in my mind. Whatever this was, it was far from over. The air around us pulsed with an electric tension, and every heartbeat felt magnified. I searched Melanie's face for a clue, an indication of what she was thinking, but it was like trying to read a book flipped inside out. Caleb stood between us, confusion knitted in his brow, and I felt a physical ache at the distance that loomed, a chasm filled with unspoken words and emotions we had all been avoiding. "Are you back?" Melanie finally asked, and the way she said it lanced through me. There was hope laced with uncertainty in her voice, but before I could answer, Jason stepped forward. "Actually, I think we're just about to grab dessert," he chimed, his tone dismissive, taking the role of a self-appointed guardian between us. "You've had your time." My fists clenched. "I'm not here to cause any problems," I said, though my voice wavered. It was the truth, but it felt like a weak defense. The courage to fully confront our situation kept slipping through my fingers like sand. Melanie's eyes softened as she turned back to me. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern creeping into her tone. A simple inquiry, yet it felt like a lifeline tossed out across a turbulent sea, and I could see the flicker of care still nestled in her heart. I'm okay," I managed, though it felt like a lie. "I just wanted to talk." "Helpful?" Jason interrupted with an edge in his voice that sent irritation boiling through my veins. "Now's not really the best time for family reunions. Maybe you can call her later?" There was arrogance wrapped around those words, and I could feel Caleb taking in the whole scene as he shifted uncomfortably, his innocent eyes darting between us as if we were the characters in a play he didn't understand. The emotional tides began to swirl, anger mixed with longing, necessity swirling with fear. I leaned closer to Melanie protectively, wanting this moment to somehow drown out Jason's incessant presence. I didn't mean to intrude." "I can leave," I offered, and each word felt heavier than the last. "Where were you, Matt?" she questioned suddenly, pain etching across her face. "You just vanished." I felt like I had been gut-punched, her words laying bare the raw wound that had yet to heal, the question lingering in the air: where had I been? A decade of memories and fractures whispered in my mind. I had to get away for a while, I confessed, and in that admission came an avalanche of regret and sorrow. "I thought it was what you both needed." "Needed?" Her voice elevated, and I could see the flush creeping across her cheeks. "You thought abandoning us was what we needed?" "Melanie, please," I begged, desperation spilling into my voice. I was lost. Everything crumbled, and "So you just decided to stop being a father?" Jason interjected, eyes glinting like a snake ready to strike. "Nice to know you care so much." Caleb took a tentative step back, the rift between us widening as his face twisted with confusion and fear. The sight of my son being tangled in our conflict sliced through me like shards of glass. I knelt down, searching for his gaze to anchor me. "Caleb, buddy, come here," I whispered gently, my heart aching at the sight of his distaste for the situation, but as Caleb hesitated, uncertainty painted across his face, it was clear he was guarding himself from a past that had already hurt him. I rose slowly, every movement echoing the struggle within me, and focused my attention back on Melanie. "That we can't keep doing this," I said softly, allowing acknowledgement of our pain to fill the tender air. "I'm here now, and I want to try to fix what's broken. All of us." Her lips parted in surprise, but then the moment faltered as Jason chimed in with a hollow laugh. "So you think you can just waltz back in and fix everything? Life doesn't work that way, Matt." I wanted to shout, to argue, but my focus remained locked on Melanie's face. Would she see the truth in my plea? Would she feel the quiet yearning behind the anger? "Can we just talk? Somewhere away from this?" I asked, and it felt as if the hope I desperately sought hung in the air like a fragile, flickering candle. "Just you and me." Before Melanie could respond, Jason shifted closer, his stance protective, while Caleb's posture signaled something deeper, a need for reassurance amidst the growing chaos. "Let's not escalate this, shall we?" Jason forced a laugh, the kind that felt more like a threat, and I could sense he was keen to manipulate the situation. We were trapped in a cycle of tension, stuck in an unpredictable limbo, and just as I felt the weight of despair threaten to pull me under, I spotted a woman across the cafe, someone who caught my eye. A moment of surprise flickered in her expression as she looked up from her table and our eyes met. An old friend from the past, someone who knew Melanie and Caleb. My breath hitched. What was she doing here? Matt? I heard from behind, but my focus remained on her. Did she have the key to this lost chapter of our lives? Was there a chance she could help mend our fracture where I had failed? Or was she simply an unwitting bystander in a story that had already taken too many unpredictable twists? Melanie turned to follow my gaze, confusion etched across her features, and I could see Caleb's eyes widen in recognition, standing on the precipice of everything unspoken. Just then, it hit me everything I had hoped for might not surface any time soon, but perhaps there was a chance, however small, anchored somewhere underneath the shadows. Except fate had its own narrative, and just as my heart dared to whisper that this was the turning point, the surrounding clamor swelled, drowning out whatever words were left unspoken, beckoning us all closer to the edge of revelation and conflict yet again. The bustling cafe atmosphere folded around us like the wings of a bird, yet I felt trapped beneath the weight of familiar expectations and new tensions. There was a current vibrating through the air, a need for words unspoken, and as I stood alongside Melanie, caught in this precarious moment, I fought against every instinct to flee. Caleb shifted nervously beside me, his small hands clenched into fists at his sides. My heart ached for him not just because of the pain he endured but also from the sheer confusion swirling within. What do you want, Dad? His voice cracked, cutting through the noise with a clarity that made everyone fall silent. I swallowed hard, desperation lacing every fiber of my being. I want to talk to you both. To explain. But I also want to hear how you feel. Feel? Jason scoffed, crossing his arms with a sneer that made me seethe inside. Maybe you should have thought about our feelings before you took off. That familiar feeling of inadequacy tightened its grip around my chest. But I knew Jason's ire stemmed from protectiveness, and part of me understood his struggle, even if it burned to feel so unwelcome. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I didn't know how to stay when everything fell apart, I said, but my voice faltered, echoing branches of sorrow and regret that I had let grow too wild over the years. The woman across the cafe, my old friend Rosa, finally approached our table, a beacon drawn closer by unseen forces. Matt? She said hesitantly, her eyes wide with an emotion that flickered dangerously close to disbelief. I didn't expect to see you here. Rosa, I breathed, a surge of familiarity brightening the distressing moment. What's going on? She asked, looking between the three of us with a mix of concern and curiosity. Everything is fine, right, Melanie? Jason snapped, his threat hanging heavy in the air as he leaned protectively towards her, and for a fleeting second, I wished I could erase the distance between us. Everything is not fine, Melanie replied sharply, her voice trembling with raw emotion. Matt just walked back into our lives after vanishing for years. Rosa's face softened, her kind nature slicing through the tension like a warm ray of sunlight. Matt, do you want to explain? She prompted gently, reaching out and placing a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. Before I could respond, Caleb piped up, do you want to stay this time? Every heartbeat felt like a million tiny explosions. I want to, I insisted, my voice breaking. I want to stay, but I have to earn that right. I need to make my way back. Caleb bit his lip, his eyes darting to Jason, uncertain of the path ahead. What does that mean? He asked, his youthful innocence mixed with a heavy burden that pulled at my heartstrings. Maybe we could find some time to talk, just us three, Rosa suggested, casting a hopeful glance towards Melanie. Why would we want to talk to him? Jason interjected, but there was a flicker of doubt in his tone, as if even he could sense the winds shifting. Because he's your father, Rosa replied firmly, her voice unyielding, and my chest swelled with gratitude for her unwavering support. With a deep inhale, Melanie looked at Caleb, that fierce, caring instinct clashing with her apprehension. What do you think, sweetheart? The question hung in the balance, and I prayed for a glimmer of hope, a moment for him to see past our fractured history and give me a chance. Caleb hesitated, his eyes searching the room as he glanced once more at me. Maybe, he said slowly, each word deliberate as if weighing the decision against the weight of years gone by. Maybe? Jason mocked, rolling his eyes. You can't just let him back in like this without knowing if he'll run off again. Before I could react, Caleb stood his ground. I want to try, he whispered, conviction ringing through his small frame. Let's find somewhere quieter, Rosa said, breaking the tension as she nodded toward the side patio of the cafe, where the raucous laughter faded into distant echoes. Shall we? I nodded, relief washing over me like a wave, and Melanie brushed her fingers nervously against her temple, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. As we began to step away from the chaos inside, a shadow of doubt loomed large. Would we find the hope I so desperately sought, or would this venture descend into more heartache? As we settled into a secluded corner surrounded by lush green foliage, the air thickened with uncertainty. But the warmth that suffused my heart at Caleb's tentative willingness to reconnect ignited something deep within me. I'm sorry for everything, for being gone, I started, meeting Caleb's gaze first. I never wanted to leave you both. I was scared, and I thought it might be for the best. That didn't make it better, Melanie said, her voice steady with pain but also deepened by a flicker of understanding. I know, I said, feeling the weight of her words sink into me like a stone. But I want to try. I've made mistakes, and I need you to know I'm working on myself. I'm trying. Trying is not enough, Matt, she countered, a steely edge returning to her demeanor. You can't expect us to just trust you. That I don't, I replied honestly. But I need to earn that trust, and I want to be present. Listen and learn and heal together. Hope hollowed out each chamber of my heart, just as doubt crept in again. As I glanced at Caleb, he seemed lost in thought. I don't know what to believe, he finally admitted, his voice echoing with the innocence of our struggles. It feels so messed up. Let's take it slow, Rosa suggested, her kindness a soothing balm. There's no rush. And as I looked between Melanie and Caleb, the weight of expectations swirling around us began to feel lighter, if only for a moment. Hope intertwined with caution, and just as the sun peeked from behind the clouds, casting warm light around us, a sudden realization struck me. Perhaps this fragile moment was not just a return, but the beginning of recalibrating the family I had once broken. Yet, as I caught Melanie's guarded glance, uncertainty swept back in. Just as a flicker of tenderness dared to surface, Caleb's faint voice pierced the air. What if we run into someone else from the past? And in that instant, the world tipped precariously beneath us, leaving me spiraling back into uncertainty. What else did the future have in store for us? The warmth of the sun fractured as clouds conspired to darken the sky. The four of us sat in heavy silence, the air thick and electric as Caleb's question echoed in the space between us. He wore the apprehension like a coat, each word teetering on the edge of a cliff built from memories both distant and raw. It felt as if the universe had conspired to thrust us all into this moment, spiraling old fears and fresh hopes into a single fragile breath. What do you mean? Melanie's brow furrowed as she shifted uneasily on her chair, her dark eyes searching Caleb's for answers that he couldn't yet articulate. Caleb looked down at his hands, so much smaller than mine, yet somehow filled with the same breadth of uncertainty. What if someone sees us here? Someone who knew you. Who knows why you left? The ground began to shake beneath what I thought was a solid foundation of acknowledgement and renewed trust. Could I shoulder the burden of the past hanging over us? How could I explain to my son that the very thing I yearned to mend might unravel at the slightest breeze? I promise, Caleb, I spoke softly, feeling a shift in the air. Whatever comes, we will face it together. I'm not leaving again. Easy for you to say, Jason interjected, crossing his arms defensively. You can just waltz back in like nothing ever happened. I know it's not that simple, I said, forcing compassion into my tone. And I don't expect forgiveness overnight. But this is our chance to begin again, to rewrite our story. As the words slipped from my lips, I caught a glimpse of hope mirrored in Caleb's wide eyes. He twisted his fingers, working through a lifetime's worth of questions he had barely formed. Just then, the clouds above us ignited with a loud clap of thunder, ushering in a sudden downpour. Within moments, rain poured down, beating against the cafe awning and drowning our conversation. Rosa, sensing the shift, stood and gestured toward the cafe's interior. Let's get inside before we drown, she suggested, her lightheartedness a thin shield against the somber reality we faced. Reluctantly, We hoofed it back into the cafe, laughter shrouded by darker shadows of doubt as the world outside transformed into a tempest of rain. Despite the laughter echoing inside, I felt unmoored, like a ship tossed in tumultuous seas. Still, the forced camaraderie brought an unexpected warmth. As we huddled at a corner table, the clamor of voices and clinking cups enveloped us, forming a barricade against the chaos outside. The past was a memory I couldn't shake, but as I locked eyes with Caleb, I could see the weariness painted on his young face. This wasn't the emotional conversation we had imagined, yet it was necessary. Do you think he began, hesitation seeping through his words as he grabbed the edges of the table to steady himself. Do you think people can really change? I mean, really? The question hung heavy in the air, each of us holding our breath, and I could feel Melanie's heart sink with the quaking pulse of uncertainty. Yes, I replied, conviction seeping in, tested yet standing firm. But it takes time, and it takes work. I wish I could show you that both of those things matter, that even the deepest cuts can heal if we choose to believe in something greater. Like what? Jason challenged, his voice a razor-sharp counterpoint. You can't just expect everyone to trust you again when you've broken that trust so savagely before. That I know, I whispered, the battle deep within igniting a sense of purpose. I can't expect trust just because I want it. But I promise to prove that I'm here, really here, and I want to look forward rather than backward. It scares me too, but I believe it's possible. Tension wove tightly between us as the moments passed, the cacophony of the cafe blending into a dull roar. Just as I thought the weight had lightened, Rosa caught my gaze again, urgency flashing through her eyes. Matt, can I speak with you privately? Sure, I said, wrestling with the idea of leaving Caleb and Melanie behind, even for a moment. As we moved aside, I could still feel the unsteady gaze of my family, their eyes heavy with unspoken emotions. Rosa leaned closer, urgency in her tone. I just heard someone mention that they saw a man walking past the cafe. Someone familiar. They said he was looking for you. My heartbeat quickened. Who? The details are vague, but Matt, she said, the concern threading through her voice was palpable. What if it's someone from your past? Someone who could complicate what you're trying to do here. Panic surged through me, reverberating against every wall I had just begun to build. I can't go back there. Not now. I can't risk this. As I turned my gaze back to the table, the reflection of Caleb's innocent face sparked another flicker of hope. I couldn't let my scattered past tarnish the fragile beginnings we were forging. Rosa, sensing the internal battle raging within me, added quietly, you need to tell them. If they're going to trust you, they need to know the whole truth. Maybe not now, I replied, feeling a heavy resistance within my soul. But even as I said it, a sensation of dread began to cloud my thoughts. What if sharing the truth pushes them further away? Before Rosa could answer, my phone buzzed with an urgent notification. A name flashed across the screen, a name I hadn't seen in years, one that had become a ghost of my past. I braced myself against the table, uncertainty crashing over me. Matt, can you meet me? I need to talk. In that moment, the sky outside roared with thunder, my world tilting dangerously again under the weight of choices I had yet to make. What did he want? Would this reveal unravel everything I hoped to rebuild? The chaos outside mirrored the turmoil within as truth and time danced dangerously on the edges of both hope and despair. The cafe was alive with chatter, steam billowing from cups, the air thick with the comforting aroma of coffee. Yet, in a corner booth, I felt swallowed by shadows, every voice faded into a distant hum. As I stared at the buzzing screen in my hand, the name loomed larger than life, each letter echoing with torment and unresolved history. Matt, can you meet me? I need to talk. The text wasn't merely a message, it was a specter that threatened to reshape the fragile reality I had barely begun to piece together. I wrestled with the ghosts of my past, the weight of my ex-wife's presence unwavering and suffocating, tethering me to a life I thought I had left behind. Just days ago, this cafe had been a sanctuary, a safe harbor for Caleb and me. Now, with that single sentence, it morphed into a battlefield. What's wrong? Rosa's voice cut through the fog in my mind, her look of concern snapping me back to the present. I hesitated, engulfed by the thought of what this meant, of the storm threatening to break once more. It's nothing. The words fell from my mouth, but they felt like a lie, the truth clawing painfully at my insides. nothing doesn't make you look like that, Rosa replied, her expression shifting from worry to something akin to resolve. Is it about her? Before I could respond, Melanie and Caleb's laughter erupted nearby, a reminder of why I was fighting so hard to reshape my life. That laughter was a beacon of hope amid the rising tide of despair I felt creeping in. I glanced back at them, Caleb's smile illuminated by a fleeting moment of joy, and it sparked something inside me. Perhaps if I could anchor myself in the present, I could stave off whatever darkness threatened to consume me. Whatever it is, it's in the past, Rosa pressed gently, her hand finding mine, steadying me. It was a simple gesture, but starkly beautiful in its kindness. You don't have to go back down that road. You have a family now, focus on them. Rosa's caring tone almost propelled me into a decision, a sense of clarity. Yet, the phone buzzed again, insisting my thoughts linger on the unanswered questions that loomed like shadows down a dimly lit corridor. I took a deep breath. I need to figure this out first, I said, the conviction behind my voice shaky yet sounding an awakening mantra. Caleb was still transfixed by the game spinning on the cafe's big screen, his youthful excitement palpable. Jason, attempting to regain some semblance of control, readjusted his posture and maintained a watchful eye. I couldn't let them down, couldn't let my mistakes shadow their bright futures. Do you want to keep this from them forever? Rosa's eyes burned with urgency. Would hiding it help or hurt them in the long run? The air thickened with the weight of her words, tangled desires and fears spiraled within me. I had once chosen silence over the truth, and look where that had landed me. Yet revealing the ghosts of my past to my son felt like labeling him with tags I had spent so long trying to detach from. I think I need a moment, I said, my voice trembling as if the force of my admission alone could crush the expectations hovering over me. The cafe felt both safe and encaged, pressuring me to confront the storm gathering just outside, with raindrops still tracing streaks against the window. I stepped outside, the cold air biting at my heated skin, its chill contrasting sharply with the turmoil surging in my chest. I wiped the screen, staring again at the notification, summon my courage. My thumb hovered over the screen, the act of pressing it feeling like a commitment to something far beyond my grasp. The world around me dimmed. Moments slipped by as panic and hope intertwined into an unbearable contrast. Just when I thought I had decided, the door swung open behind me, and I felt a familiar brush of warmth on my shoulder. Matt? A voice I hadn't heard in years, smooth yet jagged, cut through the melancholic symphony of raindrops. My heart sank, and I turned around, locking eyes with Sophie. She was the very storm I had tried to outrun, yet standing there, I was reminded of the conflicting history etched into every line of her face. Why are you here? The words slipped through clenched teeth, a mix of surprise and guarded emotion tightening my voice. That I needed to see you, she replied, her eyes casting down briefly, as if they too were weighed down by regret. My mind raced. Had the universe truly conspired to bring her back into my life just as I was beginning to pick up the pieces? Now, after all this time, there's something you don't know, something that could change everything. Her eyes lifted, seeping with a vulnerability that both terrified and intrigued me. A sense of dread bloomed in my gut, countered by the flicker of curiosity breaking through. Given the weight of unspoken words and broken paths, how could anything she shared have the power to mend what was already so shattered? Through the haze of conflict within me, I felt buried emotions shift. Tell me. Please, and as thunder cracked in the distance, rumbling hope and fear colliding, I realized with heartbreaking clarity that moments could shatter or ignite profound change, and I stood teetering precariously on a ledge neither of us could fully comprehend. The words hung unnaturally in the air between us, their weight a tangible force I struggled to grasp. It wasn't just Sophie's presence that rattled me, it was what she implied, the shadows of countless possibilities swirling around with their unrelenting echoes of doubt and fear. Matt, you need to understand. I didn't come back to disrupt your life. She hesitated, as if searching for a safe landing in the vast chasm that had grown between us. I thought you deserved to know the truth. That vague yet compelling word drove a wedge deeper into my heart, a reminder of everything I had been desperate to escape. What truth? I pressed, holding my breath, a frightened child gazing into the dark unknown. That I am not sure how to say this, but... She took a deep breath, her composure cracking around the edges. Caleb isn't just your son. He's ours. Your mother knows. That declaration felt like daggers slicing through the fog in my mind, shattering the precious cocoon of sameness that I had carefully wrapped around my new life. I wrestled with the implications of what she was saying. What do you mean ours? I thought we were done making decisions together years ago, I shot back, my voice trembling with both anger and confusion. The paternity test, she began, but I cut her off. That I know about the test. My words stabbed through the rain-slicked air, my anger mounting into a whirlwind of emotion. What I don't understand is why you waited so long to tell me. Why didn't you show up sooner? As her gaze faltered, I realized that the storm wasn't just outside, it raged inside Sophie too. I was scared, all right? Scared to disrupt the life you were building. It was easier to tell myself I was doing the right thing by letting you go. Easier for whom? I shouted, the echo of my voice dissipating into the rain around us. My heart raced as it echoed in the storm. What about Caleb? You think this is good for him? I love him, she whispered, her eyes glistened with unshed tears. If I had known he was in danger of losing his father, I would have never stayed silent. Danger? The word reverberated through my bones, panic seeping in. What are you talking about? His health, Matt. There's family medical history that puts him at risk. I thought you should know. Sophie's voice choked, revealing a flicker of vulnerability behind her controlled facade. I'm not trying to take him from you. I just want to make sure you both have a chance to face whatever might come. The air thickened, closing in around me as I processed the layers of her revelation. I felt as though I were teetering on the precipice of an irreversible decision. What if my past and present collided? What if the storm she brought with her was one I could no longer ignore? My heart raced, its relentless rhythm pounding in my ears. Just then, the cafe door swung open again, and Jason, with a concerned look on his face, stepped into the rain-soaked air. Matt, are you okay? I saw you stay back. I barked, a visceral response that cut through the rain. Jason froze, surprise and hurt washing over him. The psychological storm swirling inside me felt like a fog ready to smother whatever happiness I had clawed my way toward, tainting the hope I had carefully nurtured. Just give me a minute. I snapped, but my gaze flicked back towards Sophie, who stood silently, her hands trembling at her sides. Jason glanced between us, perceptive enough to sense the tension. Is this about? I said, give me a minute. I shouted again, frustration and fear layering over one another like torrential rain. Deep down, I despised creating this ripple not just for myself, but for my son, the very essence of my being, who was somehow still oblivious to the volatility brewing in the world around him. The rain fell harder, as if the universe itself was reflecting the chaos inside me. Matt. Jason called again, this time firmer. You're scaring me, the words pierced through the haze of my thoughts. I turned back to Sophie, seeing her raw vulnerability mirrored in Jason's wide eyes, the weight of my decisions crushing me from all sides. I can't do this right now, I said weakly, my voice cracking. I need time to think. To breathe. I turned away, feeling as if every breath I took threatened to splinter my already frayed reality. As I walked away, my chest felt heavy with despair. Before my thoughts could consume me entirely, I heard Sophie's voice cut through the rain. Can't you just give me a chance to explain? The questions loomed larger than the storm, gnawing at my insides as I hesitated, caught between the specter of my past and the reality of my present. I could momentarily shield myself from the tumult inside, but I couldn't run from the truth. Matt, please don't shut me out. Her plea reverberated within me, a note of desperation. It clawed into the protective layer I had built, forcing me to recognize her unyielding connection to Caleb and the possibility that there might still be time to rewrite our story. But as thunder rumbled ominously above, a different realization struck me. The looming knife edge of uncertainty was one I had to face alone. The stakes had never been higher, and despite my attempts to face it head-on, I felt each choice leading me closer to a precipice that could either plunge me into darkness or illuminate a path towards the light. With my heart racing, that critical moment slipped away, leaving me in a tempest of my own making, uncertain and afraid of the many directions my life could still take. The landscape blurred past me as I drove, the rain-soaked streets smeared into a stream of grays and muted blues. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles white with the tension of everything spiraling out of my control. Each raindrop against the windshield felt like a reminder of Sophie, of Caleb, of a shadowy past that somehow had burrowed its way into the present. That I pulled into the nearest diner, the flickering neon sign struggling against the tempest outside, an eerily comforting sight. Inside, the warmth enveloped me like a hug, contrasting sharply with the storm brewing within. I slid into a booth in the corner, only half listening to the comforting clinks of dishes and murmurs of the other patrons. All I could think about was what I had fled from and what I was running towards. Jason's concern had rattled me more than I cared to admit. My friend had long stood by me, patiently navigating the turbulence of my life as I stumbled through a chaotic sea of choices. But how could I possibly explain this new tempest? I needed clarity, yet it felt more elusive than ever. Just as I took a sip of the lukewarm coffee, a familiar laughter rang out, slicing through the white noise. My heart leaped into my throat as I looked up and saw her, Sophie. No, not just Sophie. She was with Caleb. They stood by the entrance, shaking off the rain, their eyes bright and innocent. Time stilled for an eternity as I absorbed the scene, the dissonance between the startled joy on Caleb's face and the gut-wrenching realization that I had just made a colossal miscalculation. The last thing I needed was to face them, to see them together in a small world that shrunk from my previous confrontation to this quiet moment. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. I never expected fate to throw me back into their lives like this, especially not so soon. The booth felt like a cage, the walls closing in on me as I shifted, my heart pounding with anxiety. I rubbed my temples in an attempt to push away the impending chaos, but it only tightened its grip around me. I was still raw from the revelation, and every nerve in my body shouted for me to escape. Sophie caught sight of me, her expression shifting from surprise to something deeper, a mix of longing and apprehension. In a heartbeat, I was a deer caught in headlights, fastened to my seat with invisible chains. Caleb's laughter rang out again, a cascade of innocence that had once been my lifeline. Me son, rediscovering his world amid the falling rain. Caleb. Sophie called, beckoning him toward the counter for a treat, and just like that, the moment was deflected, softening the sharp edges of our confrontation. But I wasn't ready for such a reprieve. Their new reality beckoned to me harshly. I was the interloper in this sweet moment, just a blurry silhouette on the fringe of their lives. Despite every ounce of apprehension in my being, I gathered the courage to rise from my seat. This time, there was no turning back. If I remained here, frozen in time, I'd lose whatever connection I had with Caleb forever. Matt? Sophie's voice was tentative, yet it cut through the din of the diner. She looked vulnerable, framed by the soft glow of the diner lights that enveloped us both like an unprocessed dream. Her unease mirrored my own. Caleb. My voice failed me momentarily, thick with emotions I hadn't expected to surface so soon. He turned, his smile beaming an echo of innocence that had the power to tear me apart and stitch me back together with his sheer joy. Hey, buddy, Mr. Matt. He ran to me, his small frame colliding with my legs as I scooped him up in my arms, feeling the rush of nostalgia and hope. Look. Mom said we could have milkshakes. Milkshakes, huh? I chuckled, my heart swelling. That sounds amazing. You know, I could go for one too. Above Caleb's head, I felt the weight of Sophie's gaze. Her expression was conflicted, trapped somewhere between hope and regret, and I knew that the film of unresolved emotions stretched tightly between us. But that bond, even in its frailty, should have been cherished. Never taken for granted. Maybe we should talk, Sophie began, but I shushed her gently, not wanting to disrupt Caleb's moment of childish joy. Let's just enjoy this, all right? I said, gripping Caleb closer to me as we headed toward the counter, the tangled emotions falling to the background, if only for a fleeting moment. As we ordered milkshakes, I felt Caleb beam with delight, and for a while, the heaviness of the storm outside receded into a background hum. But just as our laughter mingled with the hum of the diner, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a sharp reminder of reality that I fished it out, my joy deflating like a balloon. It was a message from Jasona, frantic one. Matt, you need to come back. It's urgent. There's something I didn't tell you about Sophie. My heart plummeted, the ground beneath me evaporating. I had chased down this moment, this hope that perhaps Sophie's return could somehow rewrite my story. But what if Jason had stumbled upon a darker thread woven into this narrative? What if everything I had wished for was about to come undone in a way I was too blind to see? The shake in my hand trembled as I read the message again, the words echoing ominously. I glanced at Caleb, his eyes twinkling with laughter, and then at Sophie, the woman who had shattered my heart yet shared the very blood of my son. The value of this moment weighed in the balance of a troubling revelation that could unravel it all, leaving me breathless at the edge of a cliff. I needed courage to confront this. All I could do was hold both joy and dread in my heart, waiting for the impending storm to reveal its true nature. The diner felt smaller now, the laughter and warmth fading like smoke in an unending twilight. I sat there, cradling Caleb in my arms, his laughter ricocheting off the walls like fireworks in the darkness. But along with the joy, a chill crept into my bones, courtesy of Jason's urgent text. My mind raced, trying to fit the pieces of this puzzle together. What could Jason mean by something I didn't tell you about Sophie? Caleb's fingers wrapped around mine as he chattered excitedly about the different flavors of milkshakes, each word as effervescent as the whipped cream topping his cup. I forced a smile, but it felt like a mask I couldn't hold on to. Underneath, my thoughts spiraled. Sophie watched us from across the counter, her face a portrait of vulnerability and waiting. I saw the way her gaze flicked from Caleb to me, searching for something in anchor, perhaps, or an explanation for this unexpected reunion. For years, I had longed to see her, to know if the love we once shared still lingered somewhere beneath the surface of our history. But now, as questions hovered like a thick fog around us, I could barely breathe under the weight of what might be unraveling. "Matt, I want to tell you something," Sophie said, her voice nearly drowned out by the clatter of dishes and the sizzle of the grill. Her eyes glinted with the light of unshed tears, and I could sense the tremor in her words, a mixture of urgency and fear. "I know I left without a proper goodbye. Can we just enjoy ourselves for a second?" I interrupted, more sharply than I intended. I wanted to dive deep into the well of our emotions, but my heart was a ship caught in a stormy sea, precariously tipped between longing and the dread of what Jason's message implied. Caleb was oblivious to our exchange, blissfully sipping his milkshake with a goofy grin, foam flecking his upper lip. Seeing him there, innocence spilling out at the seams, ignited something fiercely protective within me. But that warmth quickly dissolved as my mind drifted back to Jason's warning. As I racked my brain for what Jason might have uncovered, I ruminated on the past Sophie's sudden departure, her hushed phone conversations, the way she had clung to her secrets like a fortress. What had she been hiding? Feeling suffocated under the weight of silence and unspoken words, I stood abruptly, startling both my son and Sophie. "Two need a moment," I said, forcing my voice steady as I moved toward the restroom. The air felt heavier inside, thick with the unyielding tension that now existed between us all. I leaned against the sink and stared into the mirror, blinking at the reflection staring back as if it were a stranger. My heart raced, a cacophony of emotions battling within me. "I can't lose them again," I whispered, the guilt settling like an unwelcome guest. But what if that was already happening? What if Jason had found something that would drive us apart again? When I returned, Caleb was joyfully recounting something about dinosaurs to Sophie, and she laughed, her face lighting up with genuine warmth, the kind I had once adored. I felt a pang of jealousy, how effortlessly she seemed able to connect with him, while I struggled against the invisible chains of doubt and fear. As we resumed our seats, the atmosphere shifted, and I caught Sophie's gaze, her eyes searching mine, as if I were the key to a door she was desperate to unlock. "That day I left," she began, her voice trembling. Just then, the diner door swung open, a blast of cold air and rain segueing in a newcomer. I turned instinctively toward the entrance, my heart skipping a beat when I spotted a familiar figure. Jason. His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt the weight of the world press down on my chest. He moved swiftly towards our table, his expression grave, carrying an urgency that didn't bode well. "Matt, I'm glad I found you," he said, his voice carrying through the soft din of the diner. "We really need to talk." I tried to call, but Jason, "Not now," I whispered harshly, my eyes darting from him to Caleb, who was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing above us. Sophie looked between us, confusion marring her features. "No," Jason insisted. It's important. Now is not the time for this. You can't ignore what's happening. Caleb, sensing the tension in the air, tugged at my shirt. What's going on, Mr. Matt? Are we okay? His innocent inquiry plowed through the turmoil swirling within me, sending my heart into freefall. Of course, buddy. We're just talking, that's all, I managed to reassure him, but the tremor in my voice betrayed my unease. Matt, we need to step outside, please, Jason urged, stepping closer, his intensity unwavering as he glanced pointedly at Sophie. I felt a sharp pang of betrayal slicing through me. This wasn't how it was meant to be. Not today, not with Caleb here. With a fractured sense of loyalty pulling me in different directions, I took a deep breath and turned to Sophie, who searched my gaze with a blend of hope and fear. She didn't know what Jason held, didn't understand that the clock was ticking dangerously toward our unresolved past. I'll be right back, I said lamely, my heart heavy as I pushed back the sliding door and stepped outside. The rain had softened into a gentle drizzle, but the air still crackled with the promise of thunder. I could see Jason shifting from one foot to the other, urgency etched deeply in his frown. Matt, listen. There's something I discovered about Sophie when I was digging into the before Jason could finish. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, interrupting what I sensed was the revelation that could change everything. The screen flickered, and the sender's name made my heart drop. It was Sophie. Matt, wait, I read aloud, my voice trembling. You have to know the truth about Caleb. As the truth settled like a stone in my gut, I was confronted with the chilling discovery that everything I thought I understood was about to fracture again, leaving me teetering on the edge of an abyss I had never wanted to face. I had never imagined that life could twist in such unexpected ways. The storm had subsided outside, leaving only the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the window, a calming facade in stark contrast to the chaos churning inside me. As I re-entered the diner, I felt the invisible tug of conflicting loyalties. Jason stood there, worry etched across his brow, while Caleb nursed his milkshake, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. Matt, Jason said, urgency lingering in the air like a thick haze, you need to hear what I have to say about Sophie. It's important. I glanced towards Sophie, who stood vulnerable on the fringes, as if each passing moment stripped her of the confidence she had once emanated. Her eyes flickered between Jason and me, and all I could feel was the weight of my choices and the gulf that had widened between us. Maybe we don't need to talk about this here, I suggested softly, unsure if it would suit the apprehension I felt sparking like static between us. I wanted to focus on the warmth of Caleb's laughter, the innocence that had wrapped itself around us like a soft blanket. But Jason shook his head, his intensity unwavering. You don't understand. It's about Caleb. He deserves to know the whole truth. Sophie shifted beside me, her voice quaking like a tiny flame struggling against the wind. Matt, please, what is it? Caleb is in danger, not from us, but from the past. I found some medical records, Jason began, but I could feel my heartbeat thunder in my chest, drowning out his words. The tension crackled lightning forming inside my weary soul. Stop. Just stop. I interrupted, raising my voice before retreating to the tenderness of my son's awe-filled expression. I can't do this right now, Jason, but you have to, Jason pushed, panic bleeding into his voice. Enough. I barked, a deep resonance that cut through the growing tension. Caleb recoiled slightly, his large doe-like eyes widening. Dad? He said softly, concern knitting his young brow. I knelt beside him, wrapping my arms around him, finding solace in the warmth radiating from his tiny body. Everything will be okay. I promise, I whispered, mustering the strength to shield him from the storm brewing around us. But the walls were closing in, and I couldn't ignore the tempest swirling, one that involved Caleb, one that threatened to expose secrets buried deep beneath years of hurt. Taking a breath, I stood tall, locking eyes with Sophie. Why didn't you tell me? The question hung in the air, weighted with regret and raw emotion. I was afraid, Matt. I thought I was protecting you and him, she replied, trembling. Protecting me from what? From the truth? I responded, baffled by the layers of guarded emotions separating us like an insurmountable wall. You can't keep Caleb in the dark, not from things he deserves to know. Caleb peered between us, the confusion plain on his innocent face. The sight made my heart shatter. How much longer could we keep pretending life was normal when it was anything but? Maybe we need to find somewhere quieto talk without the chaos, I said, my voice softening. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about Caleb and the truth we had kept from him. Sophie nodded, a mix of relief and apprehension washing over her. I think that's a good idea. As we stepped out of the diner towards the car, I could feel Jason still watching us from the window, his presence a lingering shadow. But I couldn't dwell on that now. There was a fragile thread tying us all together, and it was time to untangle the knots woven through our histories. The drive was quiet, punctuated only by Caleb's chatter as he recounted the latest silly jokes from school, his laughter a balm against the tension that festered in the car. Sophie's gaze darted nervously between the road and me in the rearview mirror, each glance an echo of her uncertainty. I reached out, longing to assure her that no matter how difficult this might be, we could overcome it together. Eventually, we parked in a small lakeside park, a refuge away from the noise and chaos of the world. The rain had faded to a gentle drizzle, glistening on the leaves and painting the ground with a luminous glow. Once outside, I knelt beside Caleb, pulling him against me. Buddy, can we talk for a minute? He nodded, sensing the gravity in the air. Sophie took a step back, her demeanor cautious as she gave us a moment, her hands trembling against her sides. Caleb, do you remember how we talked about family before? I began, searching for the right words amidst the turbulent emotions. Yeah, Dad, he said softly, a frown cutting across his delicate features. Like when you told me it was just us? Exactly, and I want you to know that family isn't only about who lives with us, but who we love, too, I said, my heart swelling with love and protectiveness. There are things about our lives that you don't know, things that can be confusing. He tilted his head, absorbing my words like a sponge soaking up water. What do you mean? I took a breath, wading through a sea of uncertainty. Sometimes, families are made of love, not just blood. I hope you understand, we all love you more than anything. You are our sunshine. And sometimes, it's the hardships that bring families together even more. Caleb's eyes locked onto mine, glimmering with understanding, yet tinged with the innocence of youth. Like in my movie, right? When they all help each other? Exactly, I whispered, the tenderness fighting against the complexity of adult emotions flooding in. Sophie stepped forward, her voice breaking gently through the air. Caleb, your dad and I, we have a history together. There are truths about both of us that you must know. His face turned back and forth from her to me, much like a perplexed ball on a string. What kind of history? I held my breath as I glanced towards Sophie, uncertain of her next words. Sometimes, I didn't do the right thing. I left because I was scared, Caleb. I thought it was to protect you and your dad, she said, vulnerability spilling from her words like drops of rain. But I see now that I was wrong. Caleb's small brow wrinkled, mulling her revelation. Why? That's hard to explain, Sophie fumbled, her voice tremulous, but I want you to know how much we both love you. This is so complicated because life doesn't always make sense. Is that what my friend at school meant about family? He asked innocently. That it can be more than just who you talk to? Yes, buddy. Exactly. I squeezed him tightly, wishing I could shield him from the complexities of an adult world he wasn't ready for. It can be about the people who stand by you, who support you no matter what, like Mr. Jason. Caleb questioned suddenly, his eyes darting back to me, seeking clarity. Maybe. He's a friend, I said. But families can also mix in ways that may confuse us. This moment felt monumental, like we were standing on the precipice of a fragile bridge that validated emotions long buried. Am I in your family? Caleb's gaze bore into mine, and my heart twisted. Yes, I whispered with conviction. Always and forever. As his face lit up, Sophie beside us took a steadying breath. There's more, but it might take time to untangle our pasts. I caught her gaze, seeing the fear of rejection glimmering beneath her resolute exterior. But sharing this is essential, isn't it? Sophie nodded, her voice steadying. At some point, we all have to face the music. A flicker of regret ignited in my chest at the thought of how many times we had let confusion lead us away from the essence of love binding us all together. Secrets had pulled us apart, but truth could weave us back together. A beautiful yet explosive realization began to root within me, the idea that perhaps we were destined to pull through, strengthened for the sake of love meant to be shared. That I end this moment of clarity, I looked into my son's eyes, into the fragility of love we had woven. Just know that whatever happens, whether secrets come to light or challenges arise, you will always be my first priority. Caleb's smile brightened the overcast sky, and in that instant, it became clear, the path forward would be fraught with complications, difficult revelations, and testing moments. But anchored in love, we would build again. With every fiber of my being I swore to protect that love fiercely. As I stood there, enveloped by the freshness of life, I felt the weight of my choices evaporate, leaving a revitalization. Perhaps the only storms worth weathering were the ones we faced together. And under the clouded sky, I knew in my heart that together, we would face whatever came next, our bond stronger than the past, vibrant under the promise of a new dawn. Let's keep moving forward, I finally said, wrapping my arms around them both, solidifying that promise into existence. With laughter and hope, we turned to the horizon, holding together a future rewritten beneath a sky that was beginning to clear. Together forever, Caleb chirped, and his voice rang like music, bright and unwavering, the final chord striking a timeless resolution that made every hardship worth it. As I held them both close, I bore witness to love woven stronger than every secret, guiding us home, where we belonged.